Hi, I'm Christian Brindle with Christian Brindle Insurance Services.
And I'm Glenn Shelton with Lead Heroes and Hire Heroes.
And this is Taco
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Let's talk about insurance. This is a show all about growing your business as an insurance agent and bringing you up-to-date marketing trends. We have great guests.
We have sales experts. We'll talk about all things pertaining to senior insurance and other lines of insurance. We're trying to help you grow your business, and we are excited that you are here to watch our content.
If you enjoy this episode, make sure to like the episode, subscribe to any platform that you enjoy to listen on, make sure to leave a 5-star review if it allows it, and we'll see you on the episode.
We'll see you in there.
This video is brought to you by none other than Hire Heroes, you guys. Hire Heroes is your one-stop shop when it comes to virtual staffing and making sure that you have qualified talent with your business. One thing that I love about Hire Heroes, you guys, is they've actually gone through the process already of vetting and making sure that your staff member is well trained to best fit your needs. Whether you need help with social media work, posting things on your accounts, responding to people that send messages to your social media accounts, whether you need help with data entry or a multitude of other things that they're qualified to do, Hire Heroes has got you covered. If you're having trouble finding quality talent and number two, affording to be able to run payroll for that talent, Hire Heroes has got you covered with an affordable alternative to have a virtual assistant working for your business. There's a link down in the description of this video to where you can learn more about getting your own VA through Hire Heroes. I certainly recommend it. They're what we use in our business for all of our virtual assistant needs, and you will want to make sure that you check them out today. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of Taco Tuesday. Let's talk about insurance. And we're talking about the boogeyman on this episode today, my friends. We're talking about compliance. Talking about compliance. You better comply. You best comply or else. I'm joined with a representative for this organization. Just kidding.
Oh, no.
Just kidding.
I get a cease and desist letter. Glenn, you don't work for us. We're going to investigate you just for saying that.
You know, the funniest thing of all time was when LinkedIn suggested that I apply for a job opening with that organization. I would love to do it on the side, you know, and use from the inside out, you know, find ways to be like, okay, Glenn, you have to do this to get around this.
Guys, if you're listening, this is Glenn Shelton, founder of Lead Heroes, Hire Heroes, and also diseased bald man due to being friends with Christian Brindle for too long. So be careful. If you want to hang out with Christian, you'll probably lose your hair like me.
Do you have alopecia?
Alopecia. Whoa. Like Jada Pinkett Smith?
Do you have entanglements?
Entanglement. If you're listening and not watching, my background today is CMS, which stands for
the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the government organization that is in charge of rules and regulations for Medicare and Medicaid. Now, interesting enough, why is it, like, I understand how the rules work, but why, I guess I'm trying to understand, why is the reasoning behind it that, I didn't really expect to start this way, but it's just a question I had is, why did Medicare supplements get deflected to the state DOIs? Why did they draw this line and they're like, okay, Medicare supplement, yeah, that's like any other insurance product. That's going to the states. It's just like life insurance. But with Medicare Advantage, Part D, everything else, they sucked that back in and they're like, we're going to protect this and we're going to regulate this differently.
Yeah.
Government money being involved, I'm guessing, just the way the money flows. What do you think?
I would say that has to be the answer. It has to be the government funding of Medicare Advantage makes them be like, because, I mean, you think about the multi-billions and billions of dollars of government funding that goes out towards Medicare Advantage each year. the government probably looks at it like, okay, we got to keep a closer eye on this one. Like we need to keep a closer eye on this one. Like you look at MedSup, there is zero government funding. So they don't care about it because of that. Like it's all consumer-based premiums. It's interesting if you look at the models of it, because I mean, you certainly could say Medicare Supplement is ran so much smoother, easier experience for the most part for the consumer.
Flip that.
And
Flip
so
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you'd think maybe they'd be better off having the state DOIs manage it. Like maybe they're not doing the best job.
So essentially the reasoning or the logic is, if the consumer is buying it with their money, we don't really care if they get defrauded. If the government's using the money, then we're really nervous about fraud and we need extra regulations. I mean, that's the oversimplified answer, right?
I mean, that I almost cringe even saying yes.
I do too.
Because I don't know who's listening or watching, and really the world at this point is public.
Well, CMS is probably watching right now.
I used to go out to lunch with carrier reps. We try to get them to tell us like plan changes that they hadn't announced yet. And they'd be like, and we'd be like, CMS is in the trees. They're. This is like this running joke, you know.
Like, you can pat me down. I'm not wearing a wire. I swear.
No, I think I think that has to be it, right? Yeah. Like there unless there's some kind of reasoning that I don't have, and people are going to see this and they're going to be like, "You're speculating." Yes, I'm fucking speculating. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm speculating because unless you work for CMS and you're making these decisions, you're speculating too. You don't know. Even if you read something online, it's the answer they want you to have. It's not the answer exactly why it's happening that way. It's probably like anything government related, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that has to be it at the end of the day.
Yeah. So let's jump. I want to get to kind of the core issue, because there's a lot we could talk about with CMS in a general sense.
Yes. Yeah.
We've gotten in trouble for talking about some CMS related topics, but I want to get to the core of it, guys. We had an emergency podcast, not technically a Taco Tuesday, and we felt the need to revisit. Now that dust has settled a little bit, there's still stuff that hasn't been defined yet that I think Christian and I are waiting for definitions on. But the CMS final rule, which, if you don't know what that is, essentially a tradition has been created where CMS has an annual hammer they like to drop, where they decide all of these different proposed rules. Essentially these proposed rules get submitted in writing, and then I guess once a year. I mean, have they ever dropped a final rule more than once a year? I'm assuming it's a once a year thing.
So it really started last year. There wasn't really like an annual final rule prior to that. And like,
that's why it feels like a tradition now, though.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? That's what I'm saying.
I've never seen a final rule more than once a year. No.
And it's like, how can you call it a final rule if it's happening more than once a year? Then it's not it's like a quarterly final rule. Like, what are you saying?
How can you call it a final rule if there's another final rule the next year?
And again, this is speculation for those who are trying to jump on Christian or I for things that we say. I am speculating that because they were slow at rolling out new rules previous years, that they felt the need this year to drop the final rule as quickly as possible to give agents and agencies and IMOs time to adapt and adjust to the rules and regulations. Because this whole like September, October, or even August, like that's so late in the cycle to change the rules of the game. Could you imagine if like the play-ins were about to start and they were like, oh guys, we're cutting to 2 halves like college basketball.
Yeah.
And you only get 2 timeouts. You don't get 5 anymore. Like, imagine if the rules got changed right before the most important time of the year. Like, that's just so wild to me. that it's ever even happened. But moving on, CMS final rule got dropped this year. Christian, for those who might be in the unknown still, which I do believe I saw a post in the group today, 7 Figure Medicare Agent group on Facebook. I literally saw someone freaking out today. They were like, where is it? I need to see it. And I'm like, and I even responded on the post. I was like, hit that search button. Like, hit that search button in the group.
It's there.
You'll find it there.
Yep.
So give us like a recap or a highlight. Let us, especially for those who might not be aware of what the final rule this year entailed.
For one, I'll give you guys like the biggest things. Like there's so much. Like if you want to know the full list there, go watch the emergency podcast. We went pretty deep. It's an hour or so emergency podcast. So there's a lot to be said there. But the main thing is like the 48-hour scope of appointment rules coming back, taking effect for 1/1 effective date. So essentially active AEP, which it was a thing years ago when I was a fresh babe in the business.
My favorite in that podcast is you said, I sang with it, we danced with it. You said something like that. And I read that. It's like, what are you saying? Like, man, we can't late night podcast anymore. Christian says the wildest stuff. Okay, continue.
We thought it was bad during the day. But the 48-hour rule is essentially, back in play with some slight differences from what it was previously. There was a proposed change of TPMOs, third-party marketing organizations, not being able to buy or basically share consumer information or lead data with other TPMOs, which essentially means you couldn't buy leads from other agencies, agents, lead vendors, marketing companies, things like that. They decided to not move forward with that now, but they made sure to let us know that they may down the road, which is a very interesting choice.
While you just said that, let's revisit that point exact, because I did just get asked very recently by a relatively large organization what my opinion on that exact topic was. And I'm starting to get this more and more. Again, I am technically a TPMO.
Yes.
I'm a third-party marketing organization. Lead Heroes is by definition a TPMO. So this year has been a record year for people reaching out to me saying, hey, what's going on with this? And I'm like, what do I look like? I work for CMS? Yes, I do, actually. Thank you. You saw
that. Clip that.
But I just got pointedly. So before I say what I said to someone else, I want to hear what your thoughts on just what you just said right there, that they mentioned. And I wish I had it in front of me to read it. But essentially they said, even though we didn't rule on this now, it doesn't mean we're not going to rule on it in the future. Wasn't that essentially the wording it said?
More or less. Like from what I recall, it was like we're choosing not to address this proposal at this time, but we may address it in future final rules, was basically word for word what they said. Who knows? Maybe that's a year, 2 years. And addressing it doesn't mean they're going to pass it, but it's interesting that they didn't completely rule it out. That was, this, of course, something that everybody was paying attention to. So there's that. There's some rules that affected events. You're not educational events. You used to be able to distribute and collect scope of appointment forms. Can't do that anymore. One thing they did was they clarified call recording rules, which basically, chilled them out to say that you only have to record, maintain, and retain calls, recordings of actual sales appointments where you're actually writing somebody up, which is great. I was happy to see that because that was a tough thing for a lot of agents. And so, there was so much that went into that. Like I said, go back and listen to the final rule episode if you want to know everything. But those to me, and the other thing that I wanted to mention, I don't want to leave out, is changing the disclaimer to mention ship. I went off pretty good about that in the emergency podcast. That part of it drives me insane because I think ship it's just not a good way to go about it. I just think they're not qualified to give the advice that they do. They're unlicensed volunteers. which is madness to me. You know, like imagine if you went to the doctor and they're like, well, we have this free government option, you know, of free healthcare being paid for by tax money. And the doctor you see never went to medical school. They don't have a medical license, but they are a volunteer. And I'd be like, well, I'll save my $100 copay. Open me up, you know, like, or whatever. Like, like that's essentially like, that's an extreme, Glenn faded into the background.
Faded into CMS.
That's a very extreme example, but like you could take that with anything. You're about to be sent to prison for something you didn't do. Let's say you were accused of something. We're going to bring in your public defender is a volunteer because you can't afford an attorney.
Right.
They watched a couple episodes of Law and Order, you know, like that's scary to me, you know? And so like, it's classic government to me that an organization like SHIP even exists and does what they do. The fact that we have to add that to the disclaimer that says, you know, contact your local SHIP, I think that's horrible and just
state
unaware.
Health insurance. What is it? State.
I don't even know. State health insurance program or something like that. I don't even really know what it stands for, but I know what they do in that organization. I've seen so many seniors come to us over the years, call my office that just got recommended a terrible proposal on their plan that did not make any sense for them through walking into a SHIP office. And so that's just kind of scary to me. But yeah, I mean, there's endless examples, but I think that is just a tragedy for seniors as much as it is for agents. That you know, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. You know, it's state health insurance assistance programs is what it stands for. But I think it's just one of those things that's like, you know, it's an obstacle. I don't think that it's going to make or break your business. Like, you know, it's just a disclaimer you have to read, but I feel bad for anybody that would actually go there based on the disclaimer. They're like, well, maybe I should go there because the government's pushing me into that. And then I would put a lot of money on the table that says they wouldn't get as good of recommendation than they would sitting down with a licensed agent.
I would agree with that. I don't think it makes sense to have a volunteer be recommended. I think maybe there's a need for this volunteer service to exist. Maybe it should exist. Maybe there's an argument for that. But the idea that you would have to mention it as a licensed agent or state licensed, why would you need to mention a state volunteer? It just seems counterintuitive to the whole conversation. I'd love to know how that even got included. Like, where was the inception of that idea? Like, who was like, oh, I know, let's have the state licensed agents talk about the state volunteer program where non-licensed agents can help people enroll in programs. Oh, thank you. You're really smart. That's a great idea, Bob. I don't know where it came from, but I'd love to know the inception of that. Okay, let's move. I do want to move back to the 48-hour rule because here's...
Real quick before we do, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay.
I'm on the SHIP website right now, so I'm going to read something.
You're in the ocean.
I'm in the ocean right now.
Okay, let's hear it. What's going on?
So this is under their About Us. Okay, the SHIP TA Center website helps members of the general public understand, locate, and access SHIP services in their state, territory, or commonwealth by providing the SHIP locator for a general public video testimonial, and helps them link up with SHIP volunteers about general Medicare news and information and recommendations. So they admit right there that they use volunteers. I just that to me, everyone was really focused on the 48-hour rule. That to me jumped out more.
And I think I would put money on that the average agent probably doesn't really understand what SHIP even is. So that might be why you're not hearing too many people talk about SHIP. I didn't even know what SHIP was until literally the final rule got dropped and Christian and I were talking about it on the Emergency podcast. I was like, SHIP? Holy SHIP, this is crazy. So It is wild. It is wild. So I do want to talk about the 48-hour rule, and it's been talked to death already, but I think the interesting part that I want to discuss since the emergency so during the emergency broadcast, I theorized at the time that call centers would receive special treatment. And the reason I theorized that is because historically in the past, they did get special treatment. They had to jump through certain hoops to be considered a call center that could sell Medicare Advantage. And then they didn't have to utilize the 48-hour rule. This was, when was the 48-hour rule banished? 2017, 2018?
I think it was 18 or 19. I can't remember exactly, but it was around that time.
So this would be right before it got banished. I knew a call center who was certified for Medicare Advantage. And I remember thinking how it felt so unfair that all of these field agents and agencies, all of them had to play by different rules in this call center, specifically around the 48-hour rule. And so my initial interpretation was that it's going back to a model like that, where call centers are going to have maybe some additional hoops that they have to jump through. They have to, they'll do like site visits by CMS. I mean, all sorts of stuff that you as an agent or an agency, you would never have to do, but you just had to do the 48-hour rule. So if you watch the emergency broadcast, I probably said something like that. I probably said something like, oh, but now the word on the street is everybody's got to do the 48-hour rule. And that's never happened before, at least not recently, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see how these call centers operate. Yeah. Now, what's comical to me, and I'm going to bring, if you're a fan of the show, you might have seen the AI episode where I brought the finger guns out and I got finger gunned down and it's like, oh, AI's coming.
Glenn. Gotcha, Glenn.
Boom, boom, boom. Well, we're bringing it back out because I'm seeing these agents who are taking victory laps right now. They're like, oh, call centers are dead, bro. Oh,
gotcha, call centers.
It's like the meme of the guy biting the metal. You know what I say? He's standing on like the third place, but he's biting his metal. You think he's on first place, and then it zooms out and it's like, oh, that's the dude in third place. Like, why is he celebrating? I don't understand why there's this concept floating around right now that call centers just died. I'm like, right. What? Because they have to play by the 48-hour rule? Like, there's technology that will still allow them to probably run 10 laps around you before you even finish one. Mm-hmm. So that seems wildly misplaced, this whole idea that the call centers just got murdered by the 48-hour rule. But what are your thoughts on that, on the call centers having to play ball?
Yeah, I think I'm obviously for it. I'm pro agent, field agent. I'm pro field agent. And I think it's a good thing that they are being made to follow the same rules that the field agents are. But at the end of the day, I think what it may prevent is it might prevent a one-call close where someone doesn't even realize what they're getting enrolled into, that kind of thing.
That's what they're trying to prevent. It didn't work that way really before. I just feel like I think the entire rule is dumb. I really do. And I'm not saying don't follow it. I'm not saying like, be rebellious. Clip that.
I'm not saying like, gotcha, found a way around it. I'm not saying that either. Follow it. Follow the rules. Comply.
The government says.
Be submissive, if you will, if you're into that. But
there goes the last subscriber. We had one subscriber coming in.
But what I'm saying is like, I think it's good that call centers are having to do it. I think the rule in general is dumb though, and I don't think it will solve the problems that they think it does. And I think it's just, to me, it screams, anybody that thinks that the 48-hour rule is a good idea in my mind in general, just in a vacuum, is a pencil pusher. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's somebody that has never done a day in the trenches. There's people in our world that you'd think they work for CMS by the way they talk, and they're like, oh, this is a good thing and it's going to protect this person, that person. It doesn't protect people. Like, people are going to get signed up for plans because at the end of the day, if someone gets signed up for a plan that isn't good for them and they find that out later, it's because they were told something that wasn't true about the plan. Yes, Mrs. Jones, your doctor's in the network. They're not really. They never checked. They're still going to say that 48 hours later, and Mrs. Jones is still going to believe it, and she's still going to find out the hard way that her doctor's not covered. And so
Right.
maybe it helps with a little bit of that, a few scenarios, but overall, like, I think I'm happy to see that call centers have to play by the same rules, but I don't think I think the rule is, it reeks of out of touch bureaucrat.
Agreed. I think most of it reads that way to me. There's a whole nother conversation that I think we'll save for another episode. I'm just looking at the time and this topic. I honestly think we need
forever.
Yeah, well, there's a tinfoil hat. There's the Alex Jones podcast that I'd like to. There's an InfoWars Alex Jones tinfoil hat podcast that I would like to have, where I have a theory. I'm just going to mention it. We're not going to talk about it, but I have a theory that the carriers, and I've already gotten like torn apart for saying this, but I'm just going to say it again. I have a theory that Jimmy Butler is the son of Michael Jordan. No, sorry. I got you. Got you. The finger guns are. I have a theory that the carriers have hijacked this organization. They're utilizing it to create rules to shape the industry exactly how they want to shape it. And it's not, in my opinion, this isn't even a conspiracy theory. I can point to so many things that are publicly, like public information, where it's like, why are they doing this? Oh, because it benefits the carriers. And because the carriers want to cut out the agent. Because if they cut out the agent, they don't have to pay commissions. If they don't pay commissions, their bottom line just exploded. If their bottom line explodes, executive leadership and shareholders get to make that much more money. Is this not capitalism 101, you guys? Like, what else do I really have to say? But I think that deserves its own entire, I really do. I should probably do a little more homework and bring the papers, as Alex Jones would say, I've got the papers. I have the papers, Christian. I know this is coming. The frogs, Christian.
They're putting things in the water. Making the fish gay.
There's aliens in the government.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's pretty spot on.
There's aliens in the government, and the government doesn't want you to know that the aliens are already running everything. But
Trump tried to stop him.
Oh my gosh! Can we? I want a thumbnail of Alex Jones and us. Like, we're doing like the Gogeta. We're doing Gogeta.
Fusion, huh?
What if we turn into Alex Jones? We're like, no,
how did this happen?
This wasn't supposed to happen.
I want my money back.
Fusion. The government already knows.
We have no characteristics of either one of us, just Alex Jones. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. I can't talk about Sandy Hook. I'm so sorry.
Oh my god.
All right. Well,
I agree that does need its own episode. That could be a 2-hour emergency podcast in and of itself.
Oh,
there's an idea.
I will get the papers, and there will be proof. And when it happens 5 to 10 years from now, I don't think it's an overnight, but when it does happen, and I believe it will happen, I can then be like, I can just start sharing the YouTube link and I'll be like, hey, did you guys ever see this Taco Tuesday I did 5 years ago? I said it was going to happen. Boom, boom, boom. And people are going to be like, oh my gosh.
And then you'll be like, gotcha.
Gotcha. Final thoughts, Christian, on CMS compliance, the first rule, maybe anything you want to say to agents who might be freaking out, like the one I saw today in the Facebook group. What do you think?
I've said it before. I'll say it again. Compliance is a pendulum. It will always swing back and forth. So if this side of it is super strict, super like almost government overreach status, if that's what you view this as, and then this side is like, chillax, everything's cool, bro. You know, the CMS officials, they're out surfing. They're not thinking about us. You know, wild wave, dude. You know, that kind of stuff. The pendulum. So when I first came in the business, the pendulum was more this way because we had the 48-hour rule. We had, in my opinion, more rules and regulations for like events. I thought they were a little bit stricter. I just felt like the compliance was a little bit more, strict. Swings back this way. 48-hour rule goes away. It has everything to do with who's in the White House, by the way. It does. I'm not catering to one political party or the other, but it does. The CMS director is appointed by the president. If you don't know that, now you do. So who you vote for,
Aliens.
You're not just voting for the president, you're also voting for your CMS director. So
I don't know if I even realized that.
Yes.
The president is just like, hey, boom, you're in charge of CMS.
Yes. And then the CMS person is like, okay, I'm super regulation based. I'm super anti-regulation based. That's where these changes come from.
Is it a cabinet position?
I don't know the answer to that, but I know it's an appointed position by the president.
Who's there? Is there direct upline the president? Like, is that their direct
upline?
Report? Are they contracted through the United
States getting overrides?
I meant like direct report. Like, if something's going wrong at CMS, do they pick up the bat phone and say, "Hey, Biden"?
I think so. I mean, it probably has to be super extreme because I bet the president has no idea what's happening over there. They just appoint somebody and let them handle it.
He's like, "What's the 40?" Joe Biden's like, "What's the 48-hour rule?"
I guarantee he doesn't know what it is. I would bet my money he has no clue what the 48-hour rule. He probably doesn't even know what the scope of appointment is. They appoint somebody, they handle it, and they're hands off. They just don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And like, I definitely think that's the case. Trump did something years ago where he, part of his campaign was he was campaigning for Medicare. And you could tell he didn't know the difference between original Medicare and Medicare Advantage.
Ooh.
You could tell.
Lost my vote.
All over YouTube.
Lost my vote.
But that's every president. Yeah. Like, they have no idea. And yeah, it was hilarious because like Trump was talking about how Medicare Advantage needs to be funded. I think that's what he was talking about. And he's bringing up people and they're talking into microphones and they're talking about how great their supplements were working. He's like, my Medicare supplement worked well for me. And like the whole thing is talking about how great Medicare.
Oh my gosh.
And Trump is like,
oh, that's brutal. Guys,
but yeah, that's my final thoughts.
No, I love the you've used the pendulum analogy before, and I love that because it's like I know a lot of people get off into the deep end really fast and they're like, oh my gosh. I mean, I kid you not, I got an email within the last 48 hours. We were soliciting an agent for marketing, and the response we got back was, we immediately stopped selling Medicare as soon as they started making us record phone calls, which personally, my first thought is, what the hell were you saying on the phone? That was my first thought. I'm like, what were you saying on the phone? That was so bad. You're like, nope, not selling Medicare anymore. But that's not, I think it's more so like they thought they saw the writing on the wall. They thought they saw the writing on the wall that said, oh, CMS is going to completely take over regulations and I don't want to sell this product anymore, which I don't blame them for thinking that way, because that is kind of what we're seeing happen. But the reality is the rules, a lot of times it's simple to adapt to. Christian can start talking about ship every transaction. He's super pumped about it. I'm sure it's going to be easy. You can record your calls. You can do the scope. Like, there's hoops you got to jump through, but the people who figure it out, just like we talked about with AI, it's going to be the people who benefit the greatest. If you're able to scale your business and be compliant, which there's going to be plenty of people who figure it out. It's not rocket science. You just have to check the boxes. You basically have a compliance checklist you have to go through. Once you've done that, you're off to the races and you can do everything else that you want to do. So those are my final thoughts. Don't freak out. Don't panic. Wait for the Alex Jones episode. It's going to be epic. And yes, that's
Emergency podcast. Yeah, I would say pendulum, guys. It started off super, probably more leaning towards the ultra compliant side when I got in. Swung the other way. We had 3 or 4 unbelievable years where it was like the wild, wild west. Almost, not necessarily exactly, but now it's swinging back the other way, and it won't be that way forever. I would say 3, 4 years, 5 years, you'll see it swing back the other way. And then NABIP will take credit for it.
Oh,
just kidding. Just kidding. I haven't been invited to any events lately. I want to come back.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Guys, if you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting notifications every time one of these awesome episodes go live. If you're on any of our podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes, maybe you're on Google Play and you're seeing this. Why am I feel like I'm missing one of the big podcast platforms right now?
Did you say Spotify, Apple?
I said Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Where else is this podcast right now, Christian? Stitcher?
I don't know if we're on Stitcher. We should be. I don't know.
Guys, if you're on Stitcher, drop a 5-star review and say, I'm on Stitcher and I'm listening. I want to see that in the reviews, you guys. Thank you so much to our subscribers, our fans. Catch us at the summit in Utah in about a month from this episode. Come hang out with us live. Come just have a great time. It's going to be awesome. Until next time.
Later, guys. Happy Taco Tuesday.